What's going on, everybody? Happy Monday. I'm BobbyFi. It wasn't the greatest Sunday for me ever, but the great thing about DFS is we get to get right back at it. And most importantly, I get to visit with an old friend, an old colleague, and a guy I haven't seen in a while. And really happy to have Jack Hendrixson, a.k.a. Wining247, on the show with me, man. It's been a while. How you doing?
Yeah, it's been a long time, man, but I know I kind of reached out to you, and it was something I've been looking to do, and this will be fun, maybe make a little guest appearance with you every once in a while. I think the listeners would love that.
Absolutely. I'm sure they would. And I really appreciate you coming on with me and reaching out because I would always be happy to have you on. And you're a guy I always like talking NBA with. And for the most part, we tend to see things a lot similarly. And then we have, of course, extreme differences, which we'll probably get into on the show. So that should be fun. First overall thoughts, like this is just an outline of a lineup I built just right before the show after I did my initial research. Obviously, a lot's going to change. There's a lot of information we're waiting on. But I just sort of wanted to throw something together. Just, I like to reserve my tournaments, the big buy-in tournaments with an actual lineup. And even if I don't end up using that one, it usually ends up somewhere trickled down into like a $4 tournament or something. But, because I'm showing it out there, maybe it won't go to all those ones. But this is just sort of like there's a lot of ways to go on this slate. There's a lot of great plays. And it's really hard I'm having a very hard time trying to narrow it down. So what are your first thoughts on the slate? How are you sort of looking at it from an overall?
The only thing that's nice with the slate is there's a few games that I can just X off, and if they beat me, so be it. On these big slates, you just got to make those stands, and that's something I've always never had a problem with because, that's fantasy, man. You can't play every game. You can't play every player, so sometimes you just got to fade those games, and, you have the risk that it can come back and bite you, but you got to go with your favorite games, that's for sure. So just start by crossing off. I could cross off 3 or 4, maybe get one play from them, but other than that, I just kind of fade those games and don't even look back.
I mean, that's a great way to go about it. It's interesting because this year, I got on a really hot streak, and the first thing that happened, it's the strangest thing every year, the night before Thanksgiving, when they do the massive slate with everybody playing. I've had an incredible number of wins, but I usually only play one lineup because I'm with my family, and then I play maybe some, and it's the strangest thing, but I do think there's something about just breaking down these giant slates and really trying to narrow it down that's important, even if you're playing a lot of lineups, which I am tonight. So we'll get into it. There's certainly a lot of interesting spots to go to. I'm going to start off with the Washington-New York game, and I'm going to clear my my lineup here, and we'll do a sort of just raw builds of some players we might like. Obviously, we have a lot of injury news in Washington. Basically, anybody who's dressing, I feel like, is in play for tournaments. How are you prioritizing the Washington side of this game?
Yeah, I mean, this is a weird one for me. I mean, I could see Washington actually winning this game for some. The Knicks are just such a. I'd actually bet on Washington if I was betting this game, that's for sure. But I mean, I'm playing everyone basically for lineup fillers with these guys. They're kind of the plug and plays. I mean, Ish Smith. I mean, we've seen him start a few times here, so he's a lock on every lineup basically. Bradley Beal's a great spend up. 9-4 on FanDuel. What's his price over there on DraftKings?
93, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, all these guys, you got to put them in your lineup. Troy Brown is another great lineup filler. I always love getting that guy because, hey, he can have a bad shooting night and still get you there with block steals and rebounds and whatnot. So those are my favorite.
That's spoken like a true FanDuel player right there.
Yep.
Troy Brown's our FanDuel guy.
Yep, exactly. And, hey, he's not even 5K, so I've been playing that guy. But what's your thoughts then?
Yeah, I'm very interested in everybody. It's weird because there's so many spots that I actually like on this slate. We'll get into it later, but I mean, both Westbrook and Harden are extremely interesting. I am having a hard time not playing Ish Smith because the minutes should be so secure, except there's an outside chance, and they've done this a couple times. They did this in Detroit even when he was there a couple times, where especially if he's not playing well or if they're struggling with anything, they just turn it over to Beal, sort of play Brown at the 2, Bonga and Schofield. They could play a lot of different lineups that actually could phase him out. So if you're looking for a reason to get away from an incredible chalk, maybe that's one, along with the fact that there's going to be other good chalk out there, a lot of good value. So that's sort of one just thing I'm considering. But as of right now, I do have a lot of interest in Ish. I have a lot of interest in Beal, obviously, here. It's just about weighing him versus the other guys and seeing if I can get 2 of those spend ups in, which I can with the value. But is he going to be one of the 2 guys I prefer the most? I'm still sort of he's definitely in a conversation with about 6 or 7 guys for me.
Yeah, I've been hating the chalk on the Wizards for ever since it's been happening, but I mean, it's been paying off for the most part. I mean, Beal's let us down a couple times, but I mean, I've seemed to get him right basically anytime I've been playing him. So I'm going to keep rolling with him. And I do agree on the Ish Smith 100%. He's volatile. So, I mean, he can come out there and kill us. But if I'm doing 5 lineups, which I usually do 5 to 8, he's going to be in 80% of them. So, I mean, kind of a play I can't look back on.
Yeah, I get it completely. I also think as an interesting, play who might get overlooked just because of the other value, Admiral Schofield is going to play a lot of minutes. And I know that may not be exciting, but if you get Admiral, 30 minutes, I know he was terrible in his last games. Like, the point per minutes aren't exciting. He's still young, and there's, the thing that I keep getting back to is, the rebounding is so weak on their side. Who's going to get all these boards? He could end up squeaking his way into a double-double. I think he'll see some minutes at the 5 potentially tonight, probably mostly 3 and 4. But, they don't need to play huge against this Knicks team. I don't know. I just think it's kind of interesting because I think he's going to play a bunch of minutes, and I think the game's going to be a little ugly. I think there'll be plenty of boards out there, and he's 3,500. So I'm always looking for those cheap guys who could maybe squeak into a double-double. And I do think he's a potential guy tonight because I'm not trusting the Mahinmi minutes. I'm not, they had played against some bigger teams. He got more run. I'm not personally going there. I understand taking a shot on either Matthews or it's just not for the right slate for me. I can't even pronounce his name, Peziknis. But I do think Schofield is the other guy I have the most interest in this game. What are your thoughts on him and then any other value?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to the, especially if you think he's going to be rolling with the 5, I could get behind that for sure. 4-2 on FanDuel. But the other guys, Mahinmi, I'm not interested. I'm really looking to pay up tonight. There's one center, we'll get to him, that I just love, and probably my favorite center on the slate. Yeah, no, it's going to be hard for a few of those guys for Washington.
Mm-hmm. On the Knicks side, obviously you get a great pace matchup, and we just got pretty big information that Marcus Morris is now doubtful. That should change things. Do we see Bobby Portis in the starting lineup? Taj Gibson also is doubtful. There's a lot that's going to hinder on that, and I think that we can start counting on that as being when guys are doubtful, it's pretty rare that when they're day game, downgraded to doubtful, it's pretty rare they end up playing. What are we looking at here?
I mean, what's a guy that I've always, and I don't mean to start with, the big man right away, but I mean, a guy that's always been so good to me in tournaments is Mitchell Robinson. I mean, if he's going to get 30 minutes, he could crush his price tag across the industry. He's the type of guy that'll take down a tournament for you. So, I mean, I've always been a fan of playing him, and I mean, he's going to get overlooked with all the value on this slate, that's for sure. He's not my favorite center, but he is definitely in my player pool.
Yeah, I'm with you on Mitchell Robinson, and I think that over on DraftKings, obviously, because of the multiple, obviously on FanDuel, you're only getting one center. But over here on DraftKings, I think he's interesting. I mean, I liked Julius Randle before this news, and now I feel excellent about Julius Randle. I also love the environment for Barrett and Payton, assuming that's how they end up splitting up the minutes. That's how they end up, who they end up starting and playing 28 to 34 minutes, especially in Barrett's case. So I think everybody in this game feels much more stackable with that Morris and Taj Gibson news. I mean, Morris he's the second usage guy on this team, basically, second, third. And this is going to be a spot where there should be a lot to go around. So we should have some more interest in these guys.
Yeah, 100%. And then you throw in the matchup. I mean, that's just called the perfect storm. So, I mean, Julius Randle's underpriced. So he's another guy that's kind of a lock and load. I think he's going to get the most look here on the Knicks. I really do. And then Barrett, I agree with 100%. His price has come down so far. I mean, 5.5 on FanDuel. This guy was almost in the mid-sevens at the beginning of the year. So seeing this price on a guy like this in this type of spot, and then you throw in the matchup, I mean, it's just everything is, all go. So this game is a really nice game stack two environment. So I love everyone in this game. This is definitely one of the better games on the slate, and hopefully it goes overlooked on the Knicks side, but I doubt it.
Yeah, and starting or not, there could be minutes there for Bobby Portis tonight, and we know that guy can put up 50 in no time. I mean, first of all, he may actually – I don't think he'd end up starting probably, but I do think that his minutes you can tick up quite a bit if you lose both Taj and Morris. I know they have a lot of bigs, but I think that we could take a shot here on Bobby Portis. I mean, he's been playing in the mid-20s anyway. He put up 50 the game before last. This is a ceiling-type matchup, not to mention that when he plays against teams that he even played for a minute – it doesn't mean that he always plays well. I'm not going to use that as a full narrative, but he does take a million shots. I mean, against the Bulls, I think he has, 260-point fantasy games against them or something? I don't know. I just think I could look for an excuse to play a guy like Bobby Portis with all these Knicks bigs out.
Yeah, no, I can get behind that. Bobby Portis is just such a mental case, but yeah, I don't hate that at all. So I mean, he played in a little bit. He played for Washington, so if you want to throw that in there, I know he's got that narrative. It usually works with him, so maybe that gives him a little edge. But it's going to be hard because he's center on FanDuel, so that's really, really tough for me. But
yeah, for you, I can understand just not thinking about it, but I definitely like him over here on DraftKings. He also has the power forward eligibility, which we appreciate because there are some good centers out there today. Just real quick, any interest in the guards? I think that Payton is interesting.
Man, I've never been a Payton guy. I totally get it in this type of spot, but they've been so weird with the point guards, and obviously, injuries open up minutes. I get it, but for me, I'm not going there. There's a lot of other point guards I'm going to be playing, which obviously one of them, but there's another one that is high on my list.
Can I talk you into something with Payton real quick? Because we're not going to assume. I mean, even if you like the Washington in this game, I don't think you're not assuming they're going to go on the road and win by 30, right?
No.
So we assume this game should be fairly close, and I'm just going to point out that in close games, meaning like less than 30 points in the fourth quarter, which two of the games were, which he played 20 and 18 minutes in, he's played 27, 25, 27, 30, and those are in the close games, and he's put up between 26 and 38 in all of those games. I just think it's like, okay, he's 5,100. This is literally the ceiling matchup. If we think the game's going to be close, and I'm thinking about stacking it, he's just another guy for me. So that's just my case for him.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely if it wasn't the Knicks, sorry about that.
No problem.
If it wasn't the Knicks, I mean, if it was a different point guard rotation, I mean, then heck yeah. But Payton is he's on my list, but he's farther down on my list. I could probably name 4 guys right now, but I don't want to ruin the rest of the slate that I just have way above them. But I definitely price. I'll have him in one of my 5 just for you.
Okay, I appreciate that. I'm just throwing it out there. I just think that he's a sneaky play. All right, let's get over to Toronto and Indy. This is a game that I don't have a ton of interest in. I see a lot of excuses to play guys, but I don't feel like on this giant slate that I'm going to end up with as much of this game. Obviously, depends on whether Sabonis plays or not. I'm just saying, assuming he does play. What are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I'm kind of, if you could stretch and get a couple players from this game. I mean, everyone's been, loving Brogdon, and now his ownership's low. He was high priced. I mean, but he's at a good price point now on FanDuel, in the 7s, low 7s. So I can't talk anyone off of that. But overall in this game, Sabonis is another good play as well. But basically, I'm just looking at Rondae Hollis-Jefferson for some value, and that on the Toronto side, and then I might get to a Van Vliet and a Lowry, but I also might be lying on that. I don't want to, condone players, or I don't know if that's the right word, me in English, but I don't want to say players just to say them. So I don't even think I'll have any exposure to them, but Lowry and Van Vliet are very good plays on this slate as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. Lowry, Van Vliet makes sense. I just don't think I'm going to end up there. I'm gonna make a really quick pitch as a tournament for a guy who we all played, who was, 60% owned, and he killed everybody. And then he goes out yesterday and in 24 minutes puts up 40 fantasy points. He's 3,500. Boucher, the bench sort of took over that game for Toronto. I don't see any reason why that couldn't lead to more minutes for him again. He's a guy who can actually put up a ton per minute in certain situations, especially if he's playing with the bench mob. So Boucher might be an interesting, not almost like pivot off of Jefferson. He's 1,000 cheaper. He's 3,500 and certainly has upside. I don't know how much of him I'll actually have, but he is a guy who I haven't crossed off my list. And I'd sort of like to play one of these Toronto value guys, and he's the one I might end up leaning towards just at no ownership because of how badly he let everyone down the other night. Yeah,
for sure. I'll be basically flip-flopping back and forth between Hollis Jefferson and Boucher and I don't know how to say his last name, but in my lineups for sure. So I like both of those value plays. I think they're just going to get a ton of run, and one of them's going to smash. So I usually just go 50-50 on those type of plays.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and then I'm not personally – I get the argument for Brogdon. He's cheap. It's funny because Toronto's played a little bit faster in some games this year, but it's still not a great overall spot. I don't really want to – I just don't want to attack this spot personally. I understand the Turner price is cheap, or T.J. Warren, and if Sabonis is out, you can scratch all that and play any or all 3 of those guys, and maybe look to even try and stack this game then, because it is I like to look for a run back good value like that on one side. So, we'll see. But assuming Sabonis plays, just not really going to mess with the Indy side in this particular slate for me.
Yep, no, I agree 100%. This game is definitely just for value on a couple plays. If I fall on those guys in lineups, then I'll play them. But I kind of already have some stands on this slate.
Yeah. Well, let's move over to we got your Bulls and at Orlando here, and again, like the Bulls rotation is tightened up a little bit. This is not a good matchup. This is look if something happens and Carter or Levine are out, then maybe something. I don't mind playing. Like I could see the argument for Satoransky because he's been playing more in the 30s minutes. I could see Levine on any slate. I'll always have Levine as 10% on every time I build a script. It's just a rule I have. There's no way I'm not playing 10% Zach Levine.
Yep.
And then on the Orlando side, like I just think it's just Vooch, I think, on this slate. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, for the Bulls, Levine, agree 100%. I play him on every single slate and will continue to until he's 9K on both sides. But a guy that I think is going to go really overlooked is Thomas Satoransky. The minutes have really amped up. One of those games was overtime, but I watch a lot of Bulls games, and he is always in at the end. He's, mid-fives on both sites. He's been playing really good, finally getting the minutes, and that's huge for me. So I'm a big game watcher, and watching this guy play, getting the minutes and running, and, he can fill up all the stats. His defense is underrated, so he's a guy I'm really high on tonight for point guard. And that's why he's in the same price range as Elfrid Payton. I just am leading toward Thomas just to ownership.
I like it. I think I mean, like I said, I agree. I think it's interesting. I don't love the matchup, but I actually think that if you're going to, getting to them through the point guard makes the most sense, but they just play slow. So kind of not the most fun team to attack. What do you think of the Orlando side? I mean, we know that the Bulls give up the most rebounds to centers, opposing centers in the NBA. They just leak to this position. I think Vooch is interesting.
Yeah, I agree. Vooch is my favorite center on the slate. I've watched so many Chicago games, and they get killed in the post. So give me all the Vooch. I'm going to have probably 50% of them. There's just obviously two centers going at it tonight, so I got to get one or two of them, which we'll talk about in a minute. But Vooch is by far my favorite for price. You look at his price at 8.2 over there on DraftKings, 7.7 on FanDuel is kind of a joke. So, and if he doesn't get into higher ownership because of the size of the slate, I'll be on cloud nine because I just 50-point upside all day here. So.
I mean, it feels like 50 should be where he is tonight. Like I actually feel like he should be 45 to 60 almost all the time in this matchup personally.
Yeah, and then at 7.7 you need 45 from him. So I mean that's I see him getting there all day, and I love my Bulls, but man, they cannot rebound.
Yeah, and if you want to look at Vooch's, if his game logs, that doesn't even scare you off, but I just want to point out these games that he's played. That was his first game back at New Orleans after being out for over almost a month. So 29 minutes, obviously he's not going to put up a massive game there. Then you've got at Utah and at Denver. Finally, they get an easier one at Portland, and he goes nuts. So this is another good matchup here for him. So if you look at the matchups, smashing in good matchups, and no reason to think he can do the same tonight.
Yep.
Let's move on to Atlanta-Cleveland. First thoughts on this game, because this is another spot where I feel like you get a nice uptick for Cleveland, but do we really want to get crazy with this on this slate?
No, I mean, the only thing I would say for Cleveland, I mean, people are going to make cases for Sexton, and I mean, Garland's been playing a little bit better, but it's Kevin Love for me. Everyone likes Thompson, but I mean, Kevin Love at, mid-sixes on FanDuel, I just have to get some exposure, because if he goes off, I would just kind of be hitting myself in the head, because we all know he could crush that. And it's just, does he want to play? I mean, he's kind of at that point where, he's been involved in such big games in his career where, these games on a Monday, is he going to get up for these games is the big question. So I just have to have one or two shares of Kevin Love, and that's it for me on Cleveland. And there's no way you're going to talk me into anyone else.
Yeah, I get the I actually think Kevin Love, I mean, he had a couple nice games recently, and it's such a good matchup. I feel like, pace-wise, that it's one of those games where I could see him at the end of the first quarter with 27. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, why did we play this guy? So he's definitely high on my list as well.
He's only 6'5" on FanDuel, by the way.
I put him on I have him marked as FanDuel especially, yeah. I actually like Sexton. I'd be lying if I said I don't think I'll have any of him. It's just a really good matchup for a high usage spot. I know he had a terrible game against Memphis the other night. Had a couple nice games before that. He's another one in that price range that I'm going to be deciding between Satoransky, Payton, And I'm including Sexton in it for now. I just think that there's a lot of upside in this particular matchup. And I just think 35 is a number he often gets here, especially at home against the Atlanta and that weak defense and that pace.
Yeah. Yep. No, I hear you on that. I just I can't play him. I hate Cleveland.
And then on the Atlanta side, there's a 0% chance that I'm playing Trae Young at 11.2. I'm sorry.
Yeah. 10-3 on FanDuel. I mean, the one thing I want to say to everyone, they're kind of writing his name off because, John Collins is coming back. And I get it, he's going to take usage away from him. But let's remember the beginning of the season, Trae Young was still cooking and playing just fine right next to him. If anything, it might even help him a little bit. He finally has a good role man with him. And I know how it is when you're a point guard and, you lose one of your big guys. So at 10-3 on FanDuel, I think he's a phenomenal tournament play. I don't know if I'll get there, but no way, just because John Collins is back in the lineup, will I have no exposure to this guy.
Oh, no, that's not the reason for me. For me, and I'm just looking at Harden as cheaper over here. And
yeah, that's tough.
It's hard for me to go with, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Harden's cheaper. All the centers I like are much cheaper. So anyway, I think I'm crossing Atlanta for the most part. Even though the matchup's fine, it's just with Collins coming back, it just makes me lose interest in the forwards. Even taking that tournament shot on Jabari doesn't feel like the same shot it was with Collins coming back. So I'm sort of skipping over Atlanta.
Yep, agree. But yeah, right. Trae Young on FanDuel 10-3 though, so I definitely would have some there. And Harden's 12K on FanDuel, but I agree with your argument 100%.
Yeah, I think we're going to have an interesting conversation about this game because this feels like a very cross-offy game, and Embiid is questionable, so that will obviously dictate a lot. I want to know if Embiid plays tonight. I think he's one of the best tournament plays on the slate. And I've been saying this since that whole, I believe in certain narratives. When he had that whole conversation on TNT with Shaq and Barkley, and they started talking about, basically what he had to do to separate himself. He basically agreed. I took it like a man and said, yeah, I need to dominate every single night. Now, it's not that he's exactly dominated, but his shots are way up since then. But he has been pretty great. I think he's averaging 57 since then. And this is a matchup where he's going to get geared up for against a guy like Drummond. I just feel like, Drummond has been better, obviously, than he used to be, but he can still leak to the center position. Embiid is going to be completely unowned. He's won me 2 tournaments lately because he was 2 and 4% owned. I just think he's an interesting play who I expect him to get. I said this to the other guy I work with, Sheets. I said I expect Embiid to be over 60, and when he's not, I'm going to be disappointed in him. So until he's 11K, I'm just going to keep riding him. It's a huge slate. There's other places to go, but he is a guy who I have a ton of interest in if he plays. What am I crazy?
No. It's for me in this game. It's the big guys. I mean, I think lineups on DraftKings, you got to have one with Embiid and Drummond. I mean, you just have to. I think Drummond as well is going to come in this game with a lot of fire. And I know he's not done great in the past, but I mean, for all the stuff, Drummond Island in his mind, it's just, if I was Drummond, man, I'd be ready to go. So I think having a lineup with both these guys on DraftKings is the way to go. And then on FanDuel, I'm probably going to make a stand, and I'm going to play Drummond. I'm a big narrative guy, I always have been. So I think Drummond gets the better of him this time in Detroit. I really do.
All right. I like the Drummond and Embiid call. I'm gonna throw one in there for you.
All right. I like it.
There we go. So, yeah, I think for the rest of this game, obviously, if Embiid's out, what's interesting is I think everybody's a good play, and I would play Ben Simmons, but I don't think everybody's a must play. And that might be where I a little bit differ from where everyone else thinks.
Yeah, and the Blake news will be interesting, for a couple things, and I think Derrick Rose will be playing. But, yeah, there are some injuries in this game you kind of need to monitor up to lock. I mean, Josh Richardson's kind of gotten out of his little slump. He's 5'6" on FanDuel. He gets those peripheral stats, block, steal. So he's a guy you can look at if you're really, trying to find some more exposure to this game. But other than that, that's all I'm looking at.
Yeah, you want him over on FanDuel, I think, a little bit more than DK for sure. Another guy who again was terrific for me the other night in a big tournament because, again, 4% owned Josh Richardson at 4,600. I don't know what people are thinking. Let's move on to Utah, Miami. I'm guessing this is the game that we're not really all that into, right?
Yeah, this one's an ugly one. This is definitely a cross off on my list, but I'm game to at least hear you out if you could talk me on to anyone.
Well, the only guy I would have talked you into would have been your boy.
Jimmy?
I believe in great players playing great in great matchups. Like if you look at Utah over the past few years, as good a defensive as they've been, they've given up, I think, like half of the largest fantasy outputs because guys need to take over. Damian Lillard had 2 monster games against them. Giannis has scored over 80 against them 3 times. And they don't even play. They only play twice a year. Westbrook scored over 80 twice against them 2 years ago. I'm just saying, like, if you want to look for ceiling because their defense is good enough to where they might force your best player to beat you and great players try to take over, I could make an argument for Butler based on that alone at 0 ownership at a price that we would usually like to play him at. But I just don't think I'm going to end up getting there on this slate. It's too big a slate.
Yeah, I mean, man, you make some great points, though. I'll give you that, very persuasive. So, I mean, 8-1 on FanDuel and then 8-4 on DraftKings. Jimmy Butler is, kind of priced down. I mean, he should be – and he's been playing solid. I mean, I know Dragic is back. He's had a few down games, but the New York game you could kind of toss out. And, yeah, he could get up for this matchup at 8-4. I mean, yeah, you definitely that's the only guy in this game to play. So,
yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, I just think it's worth taking I think it's worth just taking a shot here and there, but again, it just may not be the right slate.
Yeah.
Moving over to San Antonio, Memphis. This is one I'm struggling with because I actually think this is a really great sneaky game stack. I just don't know if it's the right slate for it.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I'm this game is just like murky to me. Like, so it's obviously higher pace. These teams are not the teams they used to be 5 years ago. This game's gonna be high scoring. DeJounte Murray's finally getting, on an average of 25 to 26 minutes. Everyone's still scared of him, and I don't blame it. But, man, the upside a guy like DeJounte Murray has in this matchup is just, huge. And if he can get close to 30 minutes against Memphis, I mean, he could crush his tag. So I think in tournaments, Murray is one of my point guards. That's my favorite one of my favorite point guard tournament plays.
Yeah, his minutes in the close games have been right around 30. He obviously played a little less in that blowout against the Clippers, but I think Murray's a terrific play as well. Again, struggling with the point and shooting guard spots. I think that even as good as center is, I think I'm going to end up mostly with guards in my utility. I really like a lot of guards on DK. So he's one of them. One thing I like about DeRozan is, in addition to the incredibly great matchup and ridiculously cheap price, is that he's small forward eligible because I like so many guards. Now, it's not exciting, especially because you look at, you got to throw that Clipper game out because that was just a smoke storm. He has been really, really bad lately, but there is still plenty of upside for him in a great matchup. I don't love it on this slate, but it's the price is tempting me. I think Aldridge is probably the better play. But I definitely have some interest in each of them, and I really like Murray. And then I don't mind anybody on the Memphis side bringing it back if Joe Val is out. If Joe Val is in, I think that I would consider Joe Val, but probably just stay away from the Memphis side of it.
Yeah, I mean, man, even if he plays, I mean, his price on FanDuel is awfully tempting. J Val at 6'3", so I do agree if he's in, kind of tough. But back to DeRozan, he's 6'5" here on FanDuel, high floor. I agree with that one 100%. But J Val is probably the only guy I'm looking to on Memphis.
Yeah, it's funny because people just don't play him, but you look at his game log, and we're not always playing on 11 game slates like today, and the guy's put up 40 in his last 3 games. What do we want for a guy from 6,500, 63 on FanDuel, and honestly, we know there's upside on that. He had back-to-back 50-point games at the beginning of the month. It's a great matchup, by the way. It's not like the same old Spurs matchup. It's actually now a really good matchup. Just kind of interesting if he does play.
Yeah, he's always dear to my heart because he was on my first big lineup. So I'll always play that guy. So
I love it. I know I have my guys like that as well. How about over in Denver and Phoenix? What do you want to do anything with this game?
No, I mean, these are the ones I make stands on. Devin Booker's price is just coming so low and, just getting very tempting, that type of stuff. And, looking down the line, if Rubio is going to sit here, which I think Rubio is going to play, but this game is the definition of a cross-off. And Jokic's price has finally come back up where it should be. I know Ayton is out, and, you look at Baines, but there's just too many centers. So, yeah, this is a cross-off.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. If Baines plays another 30-plus minutes, but I can't promise that's going to happen, even against Jokic. It's not like they don't have other guys they could actually throw out there to at least take over some minutes against him. So it would be if you just were on FanDuel and you ended up on Booker, I don't just mind it as just because like as a one-off tournament play, if you find like, I mean, he could go for crazy anytime. It's just there's no real logical reason to play him except for that he's cheap and I don't know.
Yeah, and that's what's crazy. I mean, the one time he dropped in Boston, 70 points. I mean, he's just in those tough matchups, which you said about Jimmy Butler. I mean, guys like this sometimes shine, and it's at Phoenix. So Devin Booker's price puts him into play for me. If you fall on him, put him in your lineup and don't overthink it. So
Totally
that's
agree.
kind of where I'm at.
Yep, completely. And then we're moving over to a game that I think is really hard not to have interest in, especially if Carmelo is out of this game. What are your thoughts? We know your other favorite player is in this game, so why don't you give me your thoughts on this whole game?
I pray that Carmelo is out and people, on this big slate overlook it because these are the slates where you get Lillard sub 10%. And I mean, I watch 90% of Portland games, and just seeing Melo on the floor with Lillard is painful because, I mean, the usage that is taken from Lillard is sickening. And the problem is he won't get assists either is because Lillard,
stopper.
Melo is just kind of I hate it. I hate him on the Trailblazers. So if he is out 100% Lillard for me, I think he drops 60 here with no problem. And, he gets those assists. And I'm even running it right back with McCollum. These two guys have both been, losing usage, and they're still putting up big fantasy points. And I can't imagine without Melo not in the lineup. So
not to mention it is a ceiling matchup. Like, I mean, New Orleans, we know how fast they play. The one thing I'd say is that, so I always go back and forth. I did it last year. If you're going to play a narrative thing, the one playoff series where Lillard was completely owned by Drew Holiday 2 years ago. I still feel like that's got to eat a guy like him. So I'm just looking for any extra reason because I don't see why not to play. Like the price is right. Honestly, even if Carmelo's in, I'm going to play a Lillard share too. I just feel like he can. I mean, the guy is amazing. He's always underowned, by the way, literally chronically underowned. And I like this game environment in general. Like I love the McCollum play too. If I'm not playing Lillard, even together, I think you can get away with it tonight because this is such a great environment for them. And again, like the guy who I always play more than anyone, I just can't help myself is I play Brandon Ingram every day. And I'm going to probably play Brandon Ingram in a good matchup if I want to run it back. So look, it's not my priority, but it's absolutely high. It's absolutely on my list of something to do. A little Lillard, Ingram or McCollum Ingram is mostly where I'm.
Yeah, shockingly, Lillard's name on my computer is, highlighted, bolded, exclamation point, if Melo's out. So I think I like him a little bit here.
Yeah. What about Whiteside in this game? I don't play as much Whiteside. I feel like he tends to go over-owned these days, and I understand the minutes have been there and the ceiling is really high. I'm sort of letting ownership dictate a little bit because I like so many centers, but I do think he's definitely in play.
Yeah, he has been, man, he's getting the minutes. He's getting the run. They're finally all starting to play good together. So I cannot talk anyone off Whiteside, but I just, I'm in love with the guards here, and I just won't be going with Whiteside. I could see this being kind of a game where Whiteside loses a few minutes. I think he'll still be in the 30s, but they're not really going to need his size that much. I mean, Jackson Hayes, yeah, I just don't think they're going to need his size that much. I think this game just goes to the guards here, and there's just so many centers. If it was a 6-game slate, yeah, give me some Whiteside, but I'm just not finding myself going there.
Yeah, same. And I don't think I'm going to end up playing the bigs favors on the other side or anything either. I mean, I thought about it for a little bit. All right. I do think that this is the spot where in my initial lineup that I showed you guys at the beginning of the thing, this was a game I was targeting. I think there's a lot of upside in this game that's sneaky, and I really, really like a few spots here. I'm interested if you have any interest in this game or if you lean on one side or the other with Westbrook versus Harden.
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, especially on FanDuel, you're going to get a $2,400 price decrease by going to Westbrook. My point guard slots are going to be pretty taken up, but I definitely will have a Westbrook share at 9.6 on FanDuel. He's finally seems like he's playing good side, to Harden. His shot's starting to fall. I was watching a few of those games. I think I was watching the Clippers game. His jumpers there, that little 15-footer pull up, like he wasn't hitting that, to start the season, and that's a big part of his game. So I think he does have the 50-point upside here. Harden could smash in this spot, but I'm leaning a little bit Westbrook when it comes to FanDuel just because of the $2,500 price difference.
Yeah, and you got a big price difference over here at $2,100 also. It's an interesting situation because I would say that the matchups that lean a little bit better towards Harden, but it doesn't really matter that much with either of these guys, so I don't worry. And I honestly think that we'd be lying if we always could predict it, because I don't think they go into it with a plan of what to do, with the exception of, I know Westbrook hates Patrick Beverley, so maybe that add a little motivation in a Clipper game. I think that they may not even be the best play on their team, though. Assuming Clint Capella plays, which I am going to assume that he does, I feel like he's just always from 40 to 60 in this matchup. This is, I feel like, a smash spot for him. 7,400 still feels too cheap. I like the game as a stack. I don't mind playing him with Harden or Westbrook. He's the beneficiary of a ton of their assists on those alley-oops and all that. I think on the other side, I'm extremely interested in speculating in two major spots. I think it's time to play De'Aaron Fox. I think the minutes are coming back. I think we're going to see the 30s. I think we're going to see De'Aaron Fox at 6,400. If we don't play him tonight, we're going to be kicking ourselves, in my opinion. I really think he's one of the stronger plays. Just when you look at how he's working back into it, I don't care whether he starts or not. And the other guy who I feel the same way about, his first home game in a while, he came back and had 2 home games off the bat where he was obviously limited minutes-wise because he was coming back. Ben Holmes has been playing well, but they've been on the road. I wonder if at home, especially if he's playing well, if he's also gotten in foul trouble twice, if they wouldn't let him get a little extra run here. And I love the matchup for him playing either the 4 or even the 5, because the Capella can still leak points to the centers. So I just think that it's like a really interesting spot with those two guys, especially if Bogdanovich is out. And if Bogdanovich is in, I think I will take one shot on Bogdanovich.
Yeah, no, definitely. And Bagley, man, they're just dangling the cookie right in front of you, with his price tag. So for me, I hate this, but I'm going to be there's so many power forwards I like tonight where he's not going to make my builds. I think it's going to be
on FanDuel?
6K.
Yeah.
So, 5.7 on DraftKings, you can put him, in a few,
few different spots.
Yeah, exactly. So I can see it more on DraftKings, but FanDuel is kind of one of those places I'm making a stand. But Fox, I agree 100% on. I think now's the time to play him. He's kind of low priced, and 6.7 on FanDuel. He's a guy that there's 4 point guards I love tonight: Thomas Satoransky, Murray, Fox, and Lillard. And then Westbrook's kind of number 5. So those are basically my guys in my lineups. And you hit the nail on the head with Fox. And other than that, there's just not anything I'm really liking when it comes to Sacramento.
Yeah, I think stuff does hinge on a little bit on Bogdanovich for me. And I just play Bogdanovich more than probably anybody does. And I love this guy for the upside that he has. Also, he ends up closing, and he gets he also gets the run without Fox and Bagley usually, although they've been messing around with their lineups lately. So I'm actually interested to see how the starting lineup breaks out, but I think I'm going to have a lot of exposure to this game. I don't even mind Buddy Hield because I consider it such a good shooting matchup. This game, people think Sacramento plays slow. They play a lot slower because De'Aaron Fox has been out all year. Houston can be one of the fastest-paced teams in the NBA, especially when Westbrook is the one leading the offense. So if you like this stack, I think that Westbrook might make a little more sense than Harden in the stack, but I really think it's an interesting game to stack anyway.
100%. There's always those games where it's like you pick 1 or 2 pieces from, or you just game stack it, and that's this game. And I always have 3 games that I stack on a slate, and they're one of them. So I definitely agree with that theory.
Yeah. Well, speaking of interesting games, we aren't going to possibly know. Maybe we will know, but what if we don't know about Karl Anthony Towns? You could leverage a lot by speculating that he's out, both on FanDuel or on DraftKings. The problem on FanDuel is I don't know that there's anybody else that I really need to play if he's out. But I do think that they're all interesting, and I really like the back and forth matchup. I love D'Angelo Russell at 7,500 here. I think he could go nuts. I love attacking Minnesota in general, and I really, really want to play I really want to play Draymond if I'm not playing D'Angelo. So only because I love those guard spots in general. I also think Covington at 5,300 becomes extremely interesting with no Towns. We also have potential value here in Shabazz Napier, and just the minutes. Look, the minutes are coming back there, and he put up 35 in the last game. Look, you could say it was his former team on the road at his former team. I think that Shabazz is going to get a little bit of run. I guess it depends on who else ends up in with Layman out. I don't know. I'm sort of thinking out loud on this one, but I like a little bit of a game stack. I just don't know which way I'm going with it yet.
Yeah, I can definitely hear. I do for some reason have an inkling that I think Towns is gonna play tonight.
Mhm.
I know they want him back before Christmas and all that stuff. It'll be interesting. So Minnesota's going to be really tough for me because it just takes such a hit if he does play. And then, like on FanDuel, you have no choice. But, I kind of stay away from these situations. I know it's a big gamble and it could pay off, but 11-game slate, Minnesota might be a team that I kind of just shy away from. But I don't hate the Napier call. There's just so many point guards I like. Wiggins is always a guy I have no problem with, but there's a ton of shooting guards I like. So that's kind of basically where I'm at with Minnesota. But then on Golden State side, you take a look, like you were saying, Draymond, for me, he's a no. Alec Burks has been, pretty darn solid. So, he's a guy that can fill in, he's been really solid. So, and then Russell as well. So it's Russell and Burks for me, basically, to sum it up.
I like the, let me see that. I like the Burks call a lot. And I just really think that this game could get, by the way, I think that playing Towns might not be the worst idea.
On DraftKings.
On DraftKings. He's going to absolutely smash in this spot. How does he not? I don't know. I just, who matches up with him? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that could, kind of scare you away a little bit is do they take it easy on his knee? The first limited him to 30, 32 minutes. So, I mean, obviously he could smash here, but, I mean, there's 6 centers that are just, so appealing.
I hear you, man. I'm just throwing it out there because I think he's interesting too. And you're right. It's probably better to eliminate more of these guys than it is to add, but I just wanted to throw some of those guys out there because I do think that they're interesting. I'm going to go back to a quick screenshot of the original, just the first thing I built. I'm obviously going to change this, but it just had some, ideas of who I wanted to play in certain spots. I still think Napier I think he could be super interesting at that price. I like Covington at that price if there is any reason, if for any reason Towns is out. And even still, I don't mind it at all. It's a good matchup and he's still cheap enough. But those aren't really my favorite plays. I was really just trying to build a stack around the Fox Bagley. Again, I probably will take out, this and then edit over to Westbrook and upgrade probably the Covington position. Like Draymond, as I mentioned. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, you're good. The money you save, man. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, he's been solid. 8-9 for Westbrook is a weird price to see. So, get him in the 8s is kind of nice. And obviously, get some Harden too because, you're going to feel pretty silly. And, one of those things, I don't mind putting them both in our lineup, but I just pray that Melo sits again here. So.
Yeah. Oh, man, I hear you. I'm going to just hold these as a little reserver here for a few of these tournaments so I don't forget just to mix it up a little bit, even though I'm obviously going to be changing a lot of things. And, anyway, hey, man, it's great doing a show with you. Give me some final thoughts on who you who you're – I mean, we know other than Lillard. We know Lillard is one of them, assuming Melo's out. Who else do you like on this slate?
I'm not overlooking – and I know it's the Bulls game. I'm not overlooking that game. Vooch and Satoransky are big plays for me on this slate, and they're going to be mixed in a lot of my lineup. So I just think people are going to overlook that Chicago game. I know they're not known as the fastest paced teams, but these guys are just priced too well where they can easily smash these price tags.
I love it, man. Hey, well, it's great to be doing the show with you again. We'll have you back really soon. We're going to have a lot more, we'll probably end up doing a live one next time so we can get some conversations with chat and whatnot going. But really appreciate you coming on with me, man, and we'll do it again really soon.
Thank you. Everyone have a Merry Christmas, and I appreciate it, man.
All right, bud. Take it easy. For Jack, I'm Bobby. Good luck tonight, guys.